Good morning to our guests, to our panelists, to you here at the EPP Congress in Valencia. Hello to our online viewers as well. My name is Dimitar. I'll have the pleasure to moderate this session. Today we are joined by the Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Henna Virkkunen, who's in charge of technological sovereignty, security, and democracy, and also Ms. Marketa Adamova, who is President of the Chamber of Deputies of Czechia, the Speaker of the House.
Yes.
So it doesn't get higher level than this. I hope I don't make any diplomatic protocol blunder, so bear with me. We'll have a 25-30 minute session discussion. And today, we wanted to bring together two speakers with different perspectives, different levels of responsibilities, focusing on the fact that we have the urgent priority to rearm Europe, to excel in our defense and deterrence capabilities, but at the same time being mindful of the fact that we have other priorities as well ongoing. So I would like to give the floor to the Executive Vice President with the question, given the urgencies about our defense spending, what about the other priorities we need to pursue? Is there any problem, any challenges when it comes to digital policy? How to get the balance right?
Yes. Thank you very much for this, I think, a very interesting topic we are discussing in this morning. When we look at the Commission's priorities, it's very clear that we have two main priorities for the next years, and these are security and competitiveness. And they are also going very much hand in hand, because when we are looking at our security, it means that we have to have also very competitive defense industry in the European Union, and there we need also new frontier technologies. So when we are investing to new critical technologies like AI, quantum, semiconductors, it's also very important for our defense industry. So we have to invest to research and development when it comes to defense industry. In the same time, of course, we have to build up the capacity and the volume of our defense industry. We know that the challenge is that we are lacking very much behind, because many of our member states, they haven't been investing enough to defense for decades, and that's why our industry is not so strong that it should be. And that's why European Commission has now also published our defense white paper to support member states from the funding perspective to increase their investments. But in the same time, we see also that we have to invest more, but we have to invest more also together, not only separately all the member states. We have to do more together, and we have to invest more European also to make sure that we have also our own capacities in these very critical sectors. So I see that the competitiveness and security, they are going very much hand in hand. Of course, when we speak about security, it's not only about defense. Nowadays, we know that we have to be prepared for very many kinds of security threats. Everything can be weaponized nowadays. We have seen that the migration has been weaponized on our eastern border. We have been witnessing sabotage against our critical infrastructure. We are witnessing foreign interference towards our elections. We are facing disinformation, propaganda, fake news. So there's many different threats we have to be prepared.
Excellent. Speaker Adamova.
I would include as well energy sources. And first of all, I would like to thank you for having me and wish you a good morning and pleasant day. I think that this is very crucial to cooperate between member states, and there is still room for cooperation between us. For example, the Czech Republic, Czech government now set the goal to invest 3% of GDP to our deterrence and defense. And of course, now everybody is lacking all the equipment for their armed forces. So there is great collaboration between us and other governments, with Germany, with Slovakia and other countries surrounding our country. And we are trying to buy together, because then you, of course, have a great chance to be maybe quicker in these purchases. So for us, this is one of the most important priority in the government, and I think this is because we all know that our security is precondition for other things. So we have to invest to our own security as much as possible.
So basically the message is that boosting the commitments and the spending both on a national level, but also not forgetting the commitments when it comes to supranational level as well. Executive Vice President, I want to follow up on the question of member state commitments and overall security, and specifically on your portfolio. You've been very vocal that when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to, let's say, 5G networks, we have 40–50% of critical infrastructure owned by third country, untrusted vendors, and member states, let's say, haven't been that ambitious when it comes to following up on the 5G toolbox, which the European Commission issued in 2020. I think only a dozen or so of the member states actually have done their homework when it comes to network security and untrusted vendors. What can we do so that this message gets picked up by national capitals even better?
I think the awareness among member states is now higher than it was a couple of years ago. But now when we are working with reviewing our Cybersecurity Act, we will also look more broadly all our ICT and critical infrastructure, because we know that it's crucial for our security and we have vulnerabilities there. Like you mentioned, for example, when it comes to our 5G networks, more than 50% of our communication is going via high-risk vendors when it comes to our 5G. And of course, this is not good situation where we are. So now we are analyzing the situation with the member states, but the Commission is planning to have stricter rules. We are going to propose stricter rules when it comes to our critical communication, to our ICT services and other critical infrastructure as well, that we have to look that we have trusted vendors there. We have to be able to work on all conditions, and we should avoid vulnerabilities there when it comes to our critical connections or transport as well.
Just a very brief follow-up. Do you think it's about money when it comes to these priorities, or it's political will, or it's access to technology?
Of course, it's also about money. When we have to maybe replace some of the connections, of course, it needs also funding. And but we have to also plan now clear roadmap how we will do that, and have to prioritize also that what are the most urgent needs there. But I see that especially when it comes to our ICT systems and to our transport, we have to really look now that where we have the vulnerabilities there.
Yeah. Speaker Adamova, you mentioned the 3% commitment on defense, and I think Czechia is really well positioned and really vocal of these priorities. But how do you see the European level? Because I guess you're quite in the loop when it comes to the national priorities, national debates. But here in Brussels and also in other capitals, there's a big discussion about the European direction of travel when it comes to defense. There's numerous suggestions about military mobility, defense funds. Where do you see the most important priorities on the European level when we talk about defense?
I have to say I really appreciate Rearm Europe, because this plan is something really tangible, and on the other hand, it's necessary that we are sending the message of unity, and willingness is very important as well. So I think this plan is really needed, and we just need to take an action, because I mean, all of us have heard many times recently how important it is to take our own responsibility of our own defense in Europe. Since Trump's administration in the US started their political, I would say, shift from NATO and to protectionism and so on, we really see it's not only about these words, this is about the action. So I really appreciate that we took it as our challenge, and as well an opportunity for our industries. And this is closely connected, of course. Coming from Czech Republic, which is a country with a long tradition of industry, and especially defense industry, of course we do our best to support these companies, and they are very successful. They even invest in the United States, which was for such a country, middle-sized country from the middle of Europe, maybe decades ago, something unbelievable to hear. So right now we can be proud about our action, unity and commitment, and I see that we have all the sources which we need to protect ourselves. Sometimes we lack only this confidence.
Brief follow-up. The push, the investment, should it happen within NATO, or you would like to see bigger commitment within a European pillar when you talk about defense? Is there a clash between the two?
I don't see it as a clash, actually. There is no viable alternative for NATO for us right now. I'm sure about it. And it's necessary to really be strong together. We, of course, have new member states in NATO. Putin united us even more with Finland and Sweden. And I think that this is great to build on it, you know, not to make an alternative for NATO. And I even am still optimistic that even with such administration in the US, we will continue in strong NATO.
Thanks for reminding us the expansion of NATO to Finland and Sweden, I think, was a historical moment we went through.
Milestone.
Vice President, I'm returning to you, continuing to probe on the question of sovereignty and infrastructure. We are aware that we are reliant on third country providers for many critical technologies, semiconductors, cloud storage, the list goes on, especially coming from China, Japan, the US. Is there a problem there?
First, I would like to come back for the NATO topic, because
Yeah,
from the Commission perspective, also it's very clear that NATO is the military organization in the European Union, but European Union can also contribute much more to that, and especially we can support member states now that they can meet NATO capability targets. It's one of the most important priorities, of course, now that we have to organize financing capacity for the member states that they can meet these capability targets. And of course, it's important also to organize now the work that the member states could also do more together, because we have seen that in the battlefield, it's also creating problems when we have many different systems there. Of course, it's about the training of the also the supply chain and how to organize the supply chain, for example, to battlefield if there's many different systems. So I think we have to have more coordinated approach also among the member states when we are buying equipment. But when it comes to our technological sovereignty, the situation currently is that 80% of the technologies are coming outside of European Union to Europe. So of course we have a lot of work now ahead of us when we are building our own capacities. But of course the good news is that the work has started already several years ago. I think the first wake-up call was really the COVID pandemic, because then Europe also very much realized that how global our supply chains are, and when there is disruption in somewhere, it creates also problems to our industry and for our citizens. And for example, we have identified several years ago, for example, the need to also have own capacity when it comes to critical raw materials. And then also we have CHIPS Act, where we are working on semiconductors. We know that semiconductors is something what is very global business. So often a chip can travel 15,000 kilometers before it's finalized. Yeah. So it's very optimized, the whole value chain there. But it's also important that Europe should have our own capacities. AI is something that we are now investing heavily together with member states, especially to computing capacity in European Union, because also now when we look our technological sovereignty, we have to build to our own strengths. And when it comes to AI, for example, we have very strong research community, very strong scientific community, but they are lacking access to computing capacity. And that's why we are investing to infrastructure now. And of course, also we have some other very promising technologies like quantum, and quantum is something that Europe is not lacking behind, so we are very strong there, but we are also now finalizing our quantum strategy to be published in summer, and it will be followed by Quantum Act. So it's important that we are now investing to frontier technologies, and it's always important to remember that we are the best educated continent in the world, so we have very educated citizens, sense. We have very strong research and science here, but we have problems to really create the innovations here because we are lacking still, for example, single markets. So that's why we will also propose our single market strategy very soon. And often our small businesses, they are lacking access to finance. So that is something we are also working now.
Thank you for bringing the positive examples forward, especially on quantum. It's good to remind our audience and ourselves that because there are so many prevailing narratives, also coming from other countries about that we're backward on tech, that Europeans are technophobe, which is completely not true.
We have everything what is needed to be strong and sovereign.
Just a brief follow-up. The 80% dependence, it is a looming challenge. There's been an initiative in the last couple of months called the Eurostack, and the proponents of the Eurostack are basically saying we need to focus on Buy European, we need to make sure that cloud technology, semiconductors, bring it back here. What do you think about this initiative, and overall, how can we stimulate this production in Europe and our sovereignty?
Yes, I think that public procurement is playing very important role here. That what kind of services our public sector, European Commission, member states, municipalities are, for example, buying. So if we are buying European products, of course, it will create much more opportunities. And it's also public procurement is often much more encouraging for the innovations and investments than funding, because then when you are buying something, you are really buying the outcome you are buying the product. So it's also giving incentive for the startups and SMEs really, of course, to also deliver with the product. So I think we should use this tool much more now when we are speaking about technologies. And we are currently also preparing our Cloud Act because, like you said, of course, cloud capacity is something what is very critical also for us.
Speaker Adamova, I want to come back to you and again continue the conversation about the 3% and the defense spending priorities. I mean, 3% coming from Czechia, it's quite a commitment compared to, let's say, a dozen other European member states, which are far below even the 2% threshold. But coming back to our initial topic on balancing priorities, the 3% commitment, do you think that there's going to be societal support about this? Do people realize the urgency of the situation, even if this means maybe compromising with some other spending areas?
This is the role for leaders, for politicians to explain to society what's needed and why it is needed. And as I said, it's precondition, our security is precondition for our current lifestyle, to keep it, to be able to continue in progress in many other fields. So that's why I think that this is really necessary to show to the people that we have a plan. This is very important. And it's not only about a number in the budget, it's about capabilities. I definitely agree with that, because this approach is very needed. We are investing almost 40% from this budget to defense on equipment or investments, but as well we try to increase salaries and everything which attracts personnel, which attracts people to join armed forces, because equipment, modern and great, is still nothing without personnel, and we need them to attract. So this is, hand by hand going with another legislation we just recently passed in our parliament, and it includes incentives for people to come to be part of our armed forces. And of course, this goal for 3% of GDP was, set after huge discussion in the government, and it's not easy to fulfill because we still are having a lot of other issues to solve. But we are going step by step, and we would like to reach the number in 2030, which means that we still have a few years to do so. And it's really important to mention that we started a few years ago. I think it was in 2022 when we passed the legislation that 2% of GDP is a mandatory in our budget. which means that all the governments, even if we change the government, they have to follow this legislation because it's written in the law. And I think this is maybe a good example for other countries how to go through, and it helps in the discussion with the public as well.
It's an example, it's a benchmark, and I mean, as a Bulgarian national, I also want to stress how important is countries like Czechia, countries like Poland. We look up to countries in the region for leadership and for incentives when it comes to these topics. We have time for maybe a couple more questions. And Vice President, I want to come back to artificial intelligence, AI, the biggest hype in town for weeks and for months and years in the past. You draw a very compelling vision when it comes to AI, saying that Europe can be an AI continent, and we already see a number of initiatives coming from the Commission when it comes to the artificial intelligence. What makes you positive that actually we have economic advantages, we have actually economic opportunities for making Europe an AI continent?
I think here we have to again build to our own strengths, and it was already mentioned that when it comes to scientific and research sector, when it comes to AI, we are the strongest in the world. So we have 30% of more researchers per capita, for example, than USA. So the research community and scientific community is very, very strong here, but they are lacking really access to computing capacity, and that's why we are now investing to our supercomputers. We are calling them AI factories, and it means that we can open up this computing capacity for our startups. We have about 7,000 startups working on AI also, and we are also bringing together high-quality data with the supercomputers, and that creates great opportunities for our researchers and startups now to develop AI. But where Europe can be very strong, I see very much it's our industrial base, because we have very strong basic industry in the European Union when it comes to automotive industry, pharma, energy industry, of course, whole our public sector, healthcare sector. We have massively data there, and there is also, we are lacking workforce also there, so AI and new technologies are really needed there. But when we are bringing together our AI and our traditional industries, I think we can be so much more productive there, and we can also create so many new services that I think it's the greatest strength we have. And also we are very strong, our industry, when it comes, for example, to robotics. And when we are bringing together AI and robotics, I think our industry can be super competitive here. But we also are facing obstacles now, or our industry, that they are not uptaking AI so actively that they could. So that's why we just also opened consultation to our stakeholders, where we are now identifying that what are the gaps, that only 13% of European businesses is using now AI. And there is, of course, huge differences between the member states. So in Nordics, 25% of the businesses is using AI, but in some countries it's very low to uptake. So we have to really look at how we can now support our SMEs and industries to use these opportunities also, because I think we have a great potential here when it comes to AI.
The uptake is a very, very crucial point. I think it also applies to AI, also to big data, also to cloud. I think many of our SMEs and many of our companies still haven't adopted these technologies, and this is a very important message as well, because internationally there's always these narratives, you know, we're looking for the big aha moment, for the big LLM models or something like this, but in essence, the diffusion of technology across society is actually the deal breaker, not only the big breakthrough. So it's good that you remind us of this as well. Final question to you, maybe moving away from the topics and the more technical discussions and the 3% and all of that. I saw that you've been very vocal publicly about the fact that the current US administration decided to defund and stop promoting, for example, Radio Free Europe. We also saw these decisions applied in other international organizations, which their mandate is to promote democracy and democratic values internationally. Yes. What's the problem there? Question number one. And second, can Europe actually, step up in this situation so that actually the European continent becomes the beacon of liberty and democratic values internationally?
Thank you for this question, because I've been vocal about this, and I think it's necessary to cooperate among European countries, firstly to make a pressure or push to the Congress, because it's not only Trump who can decide, and to push them to change the decision. And I think this is necessary because Radio Free Europe, played a huge role in our own history
Absolutely.
and the history of the whole region,
Yes.
and is playing now a very important role in many other countries, more than 20. And spreading trustful information is part of the transformation, or help for the changes which can be done in such countries. So I'm quite sure this is part of soft power, and we are, I would say, it's our duty to help them. It's in our own aim as well, in our own interest, because this can be done by not only this change of decision in Congress, but as well by our own support, funding Radio Free Europe. Maybe part of their budget we can cover by our own sources, and these two things are going in hand. So if I may, I would like to use this opportunity to raise awareness about, and I wrote a letter to the Speaker of the Congress and as well of the Senate to ask them to change the decision. And of course we know this is a very fragile situation right now. It's changing almost week by week because courts are as well involved. But still I think it's necessary to maybe remain how important such a tool is in a current situation in many countries, such as Ukraine, Russia, other countries in the region.
And I really want to thank you for this initiative, because it's also good to remind ourselves that there's a Congress in the States which has its certain obligations and functions.
Exactly.
So pressure coming from different levels, so reminding them about the commitments and about the priorities is essential. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our session. A warm round of applause for our speakers. Thank you very much.